All right, guys, we are live. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Beard of Darkness Book Reviews. I'm so happy to be back again tonight, guys, with a gentleman who's been so patient with me, having to reschedule, and I've been excited to talk with him. I've had him on the channel with a few other authors, but it's going to be so cool to talk with him one-on-one. Charles Hack, how are you tonight, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so glad we could finally pull together. Not that it was that complicated. We did okay. I mean, gosh, a guy goes in the hospital, you can postpone a conversation. So,
Well,
yeah.
I feel like I canceled one before. Maybe, I don't know. I do it a lot because things just
Yeah.
always come up, but it's like, hey man, that's life and we're here now. And I'm so excited, dude, because there's a lot of aspects about not just that you're an author or that you write, you're doing what I want to do eventually, but there's many aspects that I'm going to get into that I really respect. And I would love to know some more. But first, just to dip into the books that I'm aware of and that I'm most familiar with, would you tell us a little bit first about Into the Darkness, kind of an overview of what that series and that book in particular is like? Yes, it's so beautiful.
That's the hardback right there.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So Into the Darkness. This is the first book that I published, but it's not the first book that I wrote because I've been writing for a long time. But this was the first one that was publishable. Love the characters, love the story. And what this is, it's book one in what I call the Space Warfare Group series. And it's a series of, technically it's sort of military sci-fi, but it's not like Space Marine military sci-fi like people are familiar with. It's more of a space opera sort of thing, heavily influenced by Star Wars. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of my influences. But if you like Star Wars, I think you'd like these books. And Into the Darkness was actually, I think, the third book with these characters in this world that I was developing and working through. And it kind of accidentally happened. As silly as this sounds, I accidentally wrote a book that I wasn't intending to write. And what came out was Into the Darkness. And I think the way to describe it is it's far future space, but it's sort of a political military conspiracy thriller that happens in space. So some of the reviews I've had over since it's been published have described it as like a crossover between Tom Clancy and Star Wars. And I think that's like just a massive compliment if you know anything about Tom Clancy's work. Yeah. So
I think that's amazing. I think the first introduction to Tom Clancy for me was video games, right? Because I wasn't a reader at a young age. So I think that's super awesome. I did want to throw up Tim's comment. He says, well, we already know he's cool dude from the shirt. Love it.
Oh yeah. I mean, how many of the authors out there have this shirt? I mean, they all need it right now.
Yeah, there's a nice little chunk. There's like 5 or 6 or 7, something like that. I lost count, but my wife is
awesome.
Yeah, she absolutely loves doing it, and I love seeing it. It's funny, Balding, Mike Molman, he has that same T-shirt on his mannequin. So like when we're live, you're like looking at his mannequin and it's got the shirt on. It's hilarious.
That's fantastic. I love it. Yeah.
So that's awesome. Into the Darkness, and I kind of liked that you said you accidentally wrote a novel. I would love to accidentally do that. Where do you find out how to just stumble across one of those?
Yeah. So here's how it went down. Ever since I wanted to be a writer, I wanted to write political, military style thrillers. The kind of thing where you've got the president and the Secret Service and, spies and assassins and, that kind of stuff. That's what I love. That's what I grew up reading. And I was working on that and I was having trouble with my plotting and this story. So I took a side character out of a flashback in that book who was just like, it's an interesting character. And I put him in space, which didn't make any sense. I started thinking like, well, maybe I should write some sci-fi because, it's popular. And And so I took this character, military character. He was in this flashback, he was a side character in the military group, and I put him in space and said, okay, what happens if this guy is in space and gets wrapped, he's in some sort of military special forces. What happens if Star Trek or Star Wars had like Navy SEALs or Delta Force in space? And that's where Space Warfare Group came from, was this idea. Because if you know the Navy SEALs, they have their SEAL Team 6, which is the Warfare Development Group, or they call it DevGru, whatever that stands for, Development Group. And I thought, oh man, Space Warfare Group, that sounds super cool. And so it was just sort of adapting. And then what I did is I was trying to write a backstory novella kind of thing, just to get a feel for the character. And I had my kids create, this goes back years now. This is like 6 years ago that I started that book. And my daughter created this princess character. My son created the bad guys and awesome. These space pirate guys. And I was writing this novella, and man, my novella turned into 130,000 word, full length, serious novel in a genre that I'm not really even a reader of, if you can believe that. I don't really read sci-fi, so it's a bit strange. So like I said, I kind of accidentally wrote a sci-fi book that really has captured my heart and that I really care about now. And so I'm still trying to figure out, like, how do you write sci-fi, or do I just write my book? And that's the debate I'm having right now, is just, write my book. Don't worry about what other people are writing.
I love that. And yes, I can absolutely. And if I hadn't seen if I hadn't binged booktube as much as I did before starting my own channel, what I found by doing so was I loved watching Joe Abercrombie's interviews. And one thing he says is he doesn't read fantasy because it seems too much like work. So he writes in a genre that he really doesn't read much in. So it does make sense. I can see how it would happen too. Like, for instance, I love reading fantasy, and within the last 6 months, just absolutely adoring sci-fi. But I've considered writing maybe like a murder mystery, because I feel like I can relate or tell that story the way that I want to tell a story easier than I can if I'm trying to write a fantasy or a sci-fi. It's just kind of like what you know.
Oh yeah. I mean, for years, people have been saying, write what you know. But that's where I came up. So when I was writing originally, I've been writing for 20 years, very seriously, like as a hobby, very seriously, and trying to get things published and go in the traditional route, some of those things. And it was always write what you know and write the book you want to read, right? That was the philosophy. Well, once the self-published world kind of blew up, the advice and the sort of the motto was write to market. And it changed a little bit from write what you know, write what you love, to write what sells. And that's what got me to actually start writing in sci-fi, was this idea of like, well, okay, what if I took a concept from a thriller series, something that's very popular, and I took that and I put it into a different market, genre, sci-fi, but had the same kind of tropes that you would see in the thriller world. So are you familiar with Jack Reacher and those books?
Yes. I haven't read them, but I'm familiar with what the main idea is.
Let me tell you, when you start reading Jack Reacher, you open up that first couple pages of the killing floor, you're going to be so hooked instantly. You're not even going to be able to breathe. You're going to be like, you'll read it in like one sitting. It's so fantastic. It's so unique. And a thought I had was like, what if you had Jack Reacher in space, but Jack Reacher is a former military guy. So he was trained, he was military and all this stuff. He wasn't Jack Reacher because he just was a tough guy. He's not Han Solo. He was a military guy that kind of got out, and he's like trying to help people. And so my series has this like long arc potentially where my main characters actually even leave the military and become more of the sort of, roll into town and help people kind of character. That's what was kind of inspiring me at first, was like, let's take a really popular tropey kind of thing and put it into a different genre and see what happens. But then I ended up writing a book that was not even that. And it was it just ended up being what it is, which is really fun.
I like that. I love those kind of just natural tellings of the process that you went through, because sometimes it's just, from what I've heard, you could try to do A, you're going to do B, and then C is going to be this thing that you just never knew you wanted to do, and it's just what worked. So I love to hear those type of stories. It's inspiring, because you're passionate about writing. 20 years of serious writing. That's awesome. I had no idea that you've been writing that long. That's really cool.
Yeah, especially since I'm only 23 years old.
I know 3 years old is, pushing it.
Yeah. So I started writing originally when my daughter was a baby, and she's 21 now. So she was a baby, and I would get up at 4 a.m. and I would write in my hallway closet. We had a little computer set up, and I'd write in the dark, and then I would stop writing and I would go run through the shower and go to work and do my day job, which was, at the time, was I was a project engineer for a consulting engineering company. And it was a hobby, but it was definitely a very serious thing that I did for years and years and years and years and years. Yeah. So
Matt Pittman from Go Read Books, I see that comment, and I'm going to throw it up here in just a second after this question, because I'm anxious to know that too, my friend. So what was it, just blanket, that inspired you to start writing? What was it? Was it you reading? What was it?
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. It was reading books that affected my life. It was reading books that were my friends. That's probably the best way to say it. So my dad was a fan of adventure books like Clive Cussler, Dirk Pitt novels, which are just so much fun. And I started reading those in high school. So that would have been like 90, 91, 92 kind of thing, like 1992, right? Way back then I started reading. And then when I got to college, I was reading Tom Clancy, Vince Flynn, Michael Connelly, a bunch of these, again, mystery, thriller, political books. Tom Clancy was a big deal for me. Rainbow Six, when the book came out, I remember getting it. And so imagine this. So I was in college and I was living with my roommates, and I had 3 roommates. So there was 4 of us there, and including my brother. And so my brother and these 2 other guys were all college athletes who played, on the college teams for Division I basketball and baseball. And so I was an engineering student, not an athlete. So a lot of times I would be stuck at home, like Friday nights. I would get off work Friday night. I'd make a pizza or buy pizza and sit down, and I'd crack open my Tom Clancy book and I'd read for like 4 hours. And that was like this period of time where my closest friends were these characters, and seeing the story arc and being invested in these characters. And I'll tell you, when Rainbow Six came out as a book, it was a big deal. And Clear and Present Danger, Sum of All Fears, these big early Clancy books that were, 1,000-page books, and they became my hobby, my downtime, my friends, and everything. And so it meant a lot to me. So when I got a little older, got married a couple years later, we had our baby and stuff, for whatever reason, it was like, no, I want to do this. I can tell a story. I want to tell a story. I want to do this. And just started. And so started typing away, working on things. And it was mysteries from the very beginning was where I started writing, was in the mystery realm. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews, the comment, yes, Tom Clancy, super fans unite. I have one Tom Clancy book. I can't remember the name of it. It's in my room, and it's like yay thick.
Yeah. So I have every Tom Clancy in the Jack Ryan universe, which is still being still writing books now under other authors, but I have every single one of them in hardback. in a special bookshelf in my living room that my wife has to look at every day. And I built a bookshelf in my living room around my TV just for my Tom Clancy novels. And it literally, it's something like 34 paper or a hardcover, brilliant. Just absolutely love them.
I like that you said that my wife has to look at. I feel like there's been some conversations had about this. Like,
well,
babe, I've got
yes,
this idea.
Yeah. So, but she has her own wall of bookshelf and stuff for Agatha Christie murder mysteries. She is a absolute lover of old British murder mystery stuff, and so we have a lot of books in our house.
I love that. That is so cool. And so you have, did you see, you have 1, 2 kids?
I have 2. Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
So the reason I ask is knowing what they do about you and seeing how passionate you are, not only about reading and certain authors, but writing as well. Was that something that came naturally to them, or was it something that you kind of, I hate to use this word, but like, I find myself wanting to kind of push it on my kids, not in a negative way, but like, I want to put it in front of them and them to realize what it is and how magical that is. How did that happen for you and your kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we homeschooled our kids from kindergarten up. So
Bravo.
That immediately changes the context, right? So we made reading fun and made reading a family activity, and we made reading important. And so we would read fun family books, fun, I would say, young adult fantasy, fun stuff, everything from The Hobbit to some Percy Jackson kind of stuff, those cool, fun adventure stories we'd read out loud as a family. That was one thing we did. We got our kids hooked on audiobooks really early on. They're still like obsessed with audiobooks. I think my son's listened to Harry Potter probably like 15 times each book. He just like so many. He's got it like memorized. But as time went on and they get a little older and they have more school, they're in high school and things are harder. My daughter's now in college and she's working full time and trying to get her bachelor's and stuff. Like there's no time to read, but she's still plugging away on audiobooks, and so she's listening to audiobooks in the car and different things, and or when she's doing chores. And so some of that. So there is a love for story in our family, even if it's hard to get the reading done.
I love that. I think, and I had never thought of it this way, but there are certain, I would say there's 70% of the audio books that I listen to are hard for me to follow. There's that 30%, like Stephen Pacey, who does Joe Abercrombie's books, and a couple other that I don't know their name. I just know that I really enjoy their voices and the way that they maybe depict or I kind of speak and portray the story. Yeah. It takes somebody special for me to be able to follow that throughout a whole book. And starting that young, I feel like is a learned trait. I think it's a skill to be able to follow somebody's spoken word and keep it cohesive.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, reading and I think listening to stories builds like mental pathways. It actually builds like neurological strength and memory and thinking, critical thinking and that sort of thing. It does things to our brain that's very healthy and it's very good for our development. Watching TV, social media, that kind of stuff tends to numb and soften our thinking in a lot of ways. And so I notice in my life, because I'm a like obsessive reader, I read for a living now, like part of my job now. My day job is reading technical things all the time and very complex. Yeah. And so I have to be a very diligent reader and reading complex things and thinking about it and assessing and writing about it outside of my writing career, outside of my pleasure reading. And I notice that if I'm watching a lot of TV, which I love TV, it makes it harder for me to work through the books. It's like, it feels like quicksand. It feels like, you're wearing like concrete boots trying to get going and it's just really hard. Whereas if I'm limiting some of that and I'm spending more time in written word form stuff or even audio form, my mind is sharper and just quicker. Yeah.
I'm writing all this down, and man, you've got so far I've wrote more already in the first 20 minutes than I think I ever have in the first. I love this though. What I'm trying to say is these are very useful pieces, and they were absolutely a question of mine. Almost everything you've covered as far as how reading out loud helps as a family and making it fun. I love all of that. So thank you for sharing it. I'm going to throw his question up there. Matt from Go Read Books wants to know, we know Tom Clancy, we know Vince Flynn. What are some other Lee Child? What are some others, if there are others?
Yeah. Okay. So those are big ones. A guy who was a huge influence on me now that I'm doing some mystery stuff, Michael Conley, who wrote the Harry Bosch novels. And if you've ever seen the Bosch TV show, they're pretty faithful to the books. Huge series, fantastic characters, wonderful writing. Michael Conley, huge influence on me. And then in the last decade, a little guy by the name of Brandon Sanderson has really, and here's the thing: is Sanderson is a very unique storyteller. I like his simplicity. I like his story arcs. I like his multiple points of view. I'm so impressed with Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, especially with his multiple character points of view and weaving characters together and seeing, Shallan come in with Kaladin and that sort of thing is really special. And so Brandon Sanderson, huge. And I think those are the big ones. I mean, I've read so many authors and so many books, but those are the big ones. I'd say my biggest influences, written form, Clancy, Conley, Cussler, all these C names. I just stay in one letter. And then Sanderson. And then I also have to give great acknowledgement to George Lucas for having such an influence on my thinking in terms of story and mixing the idea of just fantastical things within sci-fi. Lucas is a hidden little huge influence on me. It's more than just saying Star Wars. When Lucas came out with the prequel stories, and I know the prequels get a lot of grief, but when it comes to storytelling, when Anakin, that last scene in the third movie, when Anakin steps up and he's in the full Darth Vader suit and the breathing starts. Yeah, man. I mean, goosebumps. Story gold. I'm like, it's genius. The arcs, the whole thing. So yeah, those are my influences.
I think Darth Maul was one of my favorite characters of all time, and I love the first trilogy. I'm one of those guys. But I absolutely remember just being so obsessed with Darth Maul. First, his look is striking. And second, he's just a good villain.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, so good. I love it. The Clone Wars as well. I think it's great storytelling, the way they continued those things. So
Brandon Sanderson is one I've been kind of saving. Of course, it's the reason I say that. I read Elantris, and I feel like I didn't get. Have you read Elantris?
Like a quarter of it when I was on a road trip and never got back to it.
Yeah, I feel like I should have started somewhere else. So what I did is I bought Way of Kings, and you've reiterated that is some of your most favorite.
Top 5 ever.
Wow. Okay.
Top 5 ever books. By far. Like not even a question.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why. After 1,000 pages, Sanderson has a couple scenes in the last bit of that first book that still I get excited about those ending sequences that he did. Same thing with Mistborn. He talks about writing backwards from these amazing finales and building your story towards these finales, and he crushes it. The ending of Way of Kings is one of the most spectacular story wrap-ups that I've ever read. I mean,
I'm itching to dive in now. I've got the Charles Hack approval, and look, they say a Sanderlands, right? That he's the man of finishing books. So I'm very excited to dive in. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love to hear those.
yeah, and I will say, as much as I love the guy, I'm not loving Stormlight books for 3 and 4, the Oathbringer and the Rhythm of War. I wasn't enjoying as much as the first two, and some of that is maybe just the where the story's going and things. But those first two doesn't get any better as far as I'm concerned. As far as storytelling and story arcs and series and character development, yeah,
So
the
are you
best.
excited for book 5? What is that? Like something of the wind? Or...
I would say that I'm excited. I mean, I bought into his secret projects. I paid the big money for the beautiful special edition hardbacks. They are. I wish I had them here in the room. They're incredible. They're sitting over there next to my Tom Clancy books in the other room, in a special place. But I'm excited about everything until I'm done with the book, and sometimes I might be like, okay, I give it a, I mean,
Sure.
in the realm of writers, it's still an A+. In the Sanderson world, yeah, it's a B for me. That's how I felt. But I'm excited. I'll be on it for sure.
That's cool. And I've heard so many different people say that he isn't like, this wonderful writer for many different reasons. I wish I would have started somewhere else, but now I'm just so excited to start that book.
I would encourage you to do two things. Start with Mistborn and
Okay.
read the original Mistborn trilogy first. It's smaller, or listen to it on audio. The audio is fantastic, Mistborn. And then read to your children or listen to the audiobook with do you have kids that are old enough? What are your ages of your kids?
4, 3, 1, and 5 months.
Okay, maybe the 4-year-old. So there's a series that Sanderson wrote called Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, and it's like middle grade. It's a kid's story, and there's 5 books, I believe, and they are the most entertaining, fun, ridiculous, silly books that again, my family quotes these books all the time. They are fantastic. And the other thing he does in those uniquely is he teaches you, the kids, reading about things like red herrings and foreshadowing and illustrations and all these literary techniques he actually talks about as the narrator.
Oh, wow.
Who is also the main character who is writing a book. Listen to this premise. It's so fantastic. Librarians control the world, and there's a secret fantasy world out there that they're hiding. So he's writing a fantasy novel, right? It's a fantasy novel, which is actually a true story about what's really out there that the librarians are trying to hide. And so it has this ridiculous presentation of, okay, this is actually a true story, but I'm going to present it like a fantasy novel so that it gets under the librarian's radar. And it's just a riot. I mean, I can't even read them out loud. Yeah, it's a riot. As an adult, you'll just love them. The audiobooks are spectacular. They're as good as they get. They have a perfect reader.
I've tried to pick up The Hobbit with my 4-year-old, and I just know that, like, my wife's like, come on, babe. Like, I know that you're excited, but The Hobbit is maybe a little bit too advanced for a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say, I'm excited for what you hold so special. I think that is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. It has been.
So
we got a million.
What is it?
Oh, I was just saying we got a ton of comments rolling in on the.
It's so awesome. Yeah, I'm still trying to catch up because that's one of those things that I'm trying to hone. It's like while I'm talking, also trying to get all this gold that people that watch my lives always bring.
Somebody called Sanderson a poser. Tim McKay. He's causing grief.
He's a poser, huh? That's awesome. So I would love to. I'm trying to find that now. So while I'm trying to find the gold over here in the comments, I would love to hear your story as far as what has your publishing journey looked like? I know you're self-published, but what have you went through as far as publishing?
Yeah. So when I was writing originally back 20 years ago, self-publishing wasn't even a thing back then. There was no Kindles. There wasn't even iPhones when I was first writing. And so the idea was to get some short stories published. I wrote a bunch of strange short stories and fun stuff, and never got anything published. But it was, you're just learning those skills. And then I started working on a mystery novel, and my journey has been, I write something and it fails because I can't finish the story, and I write something and the plot stinks and I can't finish it. And eventually, I was into the sci-fi stuff, and I started. I can't remember why, but self-publishing was a popular thing, and I was reading some books by like Mark Dawson, who's a big self-published guy, and I was seeing that self-publishing was no longer, all these weirdos who are just selling junk, and it was some legitimate stories that were. Mark Dawson is fantastic. His stories are great. He does like assassin. Actually, you'll love this story too. He's a British assassin, like MI6 assassin, who was an alcoholic, and he's doing the 12-step program, but he's stuck on the 9th step, which is making amends. Because he's killed a bunch of people, right? So he can't make amends with people that he killed. So he's stuck, like he's permanently stuck on the 9th step. So he's cruising the world, basically, kind of like Jack Reacher, helping people to make amends. And so it's again a fantastic premise. But so I'm reading these things, and I'm seeing that self-publishing is legitimate. And then I started listening to a million podcasts, and I started really studying for probably about, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years or something, studying what was the self-publishing success route. How does it happen? What do you do? And learned a ton. I mean, everything from cover design to formatting to marketing, all the different techniques, programs and things. And because of the length of time of writing my first book, it took 4 years to write Into the Darkness. Publishing changed. Self-publishing changed a lot during that time. So I'm still I study self-publishing constantly. I study running ads. I study, techniques and ways to do things, and talk to other authors about these things all the time. And so when we got to the point where the book was done, I already knew how to go about publishing it. So we were working in that direction. So we were already working towards putting out a product that was legitimate. And there was also there's an aspect of self-publishing where it costs money. It is expensive, and you're going to have less editing. You're going to have more typos. You're going to have some things. So I wanted it to look really nice and have a really great story, and then pray that people would be forgiving for some typos and some struggles, because you can't, it's really hard to have that same quality as the traditional published that has a whole floor of people reviewing books, and it takes a year to do. So we put out, I say we, my wife and I, this executive team, published Into the Darkness in paperback and hardback and in Kindle in July of 2021. No, 2022, excuse me. So it's been about 18 months since it's been out. And we put it out exclusive with Amazon and in Kindle Unlimited. And I was very intentional about going Kindle Unlimited, and it's been a really good move to do Kindle Unlimited. And so that went out, and then I worked on book 2. I was able to write book 2 in like 9 months rather than 4 years.
Wow.
Once you know how to do it, it helps. Yeah. And we put book 2 out in July of 23. So it was a year later. We got book 2 published. Kindle Unlimited. It went really well. I mean, it's got over 100 reviews on Amazon already. And,
wow.
Great for a second book. In the middle of that, I published a novella. This is a 150-page novella with the team, Space Warfare Group. It's called Night Terror. It's a little bit more of a think like a movie kind of thing. It's a fast mission, kind of scary. There's a little more horror element with the Space Warfare Group, same characters. And then that came out between books as a appetizer for anybody who was interested, right? Like I wanted there to be
How long did it take you to write that?
people. That one was like a month of writing, and then we published it in like a month. It's 30,000 words, so yeah, maybe it was like 5 weeks or something of writing. It went really fast, and I love. In fact, this is my highest. Well, up until the new book, this was my highest rated. 4.6 stars on Amazon. People say it's their favorite, but it doesn't get much interest because it's outside of the main series. So people, if they want to get a feel for the Space Warfare Group, the world, the characters, Night Terror is a great little, read it in a couple hours kind of thing.
So you can't.
And then you can. It's actually a prequel. So
okay.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in Into the Darkness that that makes chronological reading mandatory, because there's just big things that happen that you can't read them out of order. It's impossible. And so we did Night Terror. Shrouded in the Darkness was book number 2. So it came out in July of last year. So looks exactly the same, pretty much same length. And then in the process, I'm also working on these little guys, which are little episodic. It's called Mission Brief. They're just little short story snippets. You can see this one's called Part 2. And we're probably going to release these to the public soon. And then they'll all form a story. It's like episodes of a story. So that was all Space Warfare. Yeah, is that cool? It's kind of a cool size. I mean, they're like pocket size, and it's pretty cool. This
really good marketing too.
Yeah, I think the paperback is pretty special. You can get the story free on my website for signing up for the email list, and there's 2 parts out now. The 3rd part will be out shortly. But I thought, you know what? If anybody likes the characters and the stories, they may really enjoy having these in their set too. It's called Mission Brief, and it's a kind of a prequel mission of the Space Warfare Group, and same characters, Mac, Sanchez, Boone, DJ, all these guys that you grow to know and hopefully love in the big books show up in these, and it's kind of fun. It's like little appetizers between big books. So that's all the Space Warfare Group stuff I've been doing. And then in February, we just published the first mystery novel, which is the total different series, Deceitful Above All Things. And this, if you've ever heard of CJ Box as an author, he wrote the Joe Pickett novels. You can watch Joe Pickett on A&E, I think, the TV show. It's kind of like that. It's like small town sheriff stuff. Takes place in Lake Tahoe, close to where I live, and it has there's a bit of a there's a faith-based element to it, and there's it's a murder mystery with a sort of I wouldn't say amateur detective, but somebody who's not in the police force, Hank, who ends up getting wrapped into the mystery. So that just came out.
And my wife is that's the next book she's reading.
Okay.
Yeah, she's like, "Who are you talking with tonight?" I said, "Check out this one he just dropped. The first one, Into the Darkness. She's not super into sci-fi." I said, "But check this," and she's very excited.
Well, I hope she likes it. So far, I'm amazed at the reviews. It's all 5 stars on Amazon so far.
That's amazing! Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised. It's been selling well, and the reviews are really, really good. I mean, like surprisingly good, and I'm very blessed by that. It's been super encouraging.
So 2 things, because I remember when we started, I said there was multiple points in which I really look up to what you do and some things that you are about. What is it particularly on the faith side, if you don't mind talking about it? What is it that you also do?
Yeah. So my day job is I'm a full-time pastor of a Baptist church in Reno, Nevada, which is a very unchurched area. Think of Reno is a lot like San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, very unchurched community, not like the South. And Matt Pittman, we connected recently, fellow pastor. I love it. Meeting other Christians in the community, writing community has been really cool. So I'm one of 3 pastors at this little church in Reno. I do a lot of preaching, theological teaching. I have a degree in systematic theology, a master's degree. I write a sermon every week. I read tons of complicated books. And then I do a lot of counseling, marriage counseling, addiction counseling, family counseling, you name it, as part of the ministry. Yeah.
I love that. I did not know that you did addiction counseling too. And I'm sure if you've watched some of my other stuff, I'm in recovery myself. And I was stuck on the old 9th step for quite some time myself, man. That's a tough one. Trying to say sorry for the terrible things you've done in life, and that's not so comfortable.
No, and most counseling involves some level of, hey, you need to go make amends with the person that you've harmed, and whether it's your spouse or whatever. And the most what I do, the vast majority is, I would say, marriage counseling. That's a big one. Even in the church, marriage counseling is huge in the church. But my wife and I, we also get to do pre-marriage counseling, which is when we bookish mama, way cool. I love it. We get to meet with the young couples who are engaged and going to be married, and we'll meet with them for a period of time, depending on their engagement period. And we'll go through like this discipleship training and pre-marriage counseling, teach them all about biblical marriage and roles and things. And then I get to do their wedding, and I get to perform their ceremony. And that has been the highlight by far. I think it's 7 weddings now. And these are all young people in the church that I love dearly, that we're close with. And, almost like our own kids, because we spent, say, 6 months with them every week, meeting and enjoying each other and teaching them everything we can. And then we get to do their wedding and celebrate that with them. It's incredible. And we have relationships. It's so special. And, having been at the same church for a long time, we have, I've done weddings now of people who were like young teenagers. They were like 13 when we met them, and I've done their wedding, and we see their kids now. And that kind of stuff is really special. So because of my faith, because of my outside of being a pastor, just my Christian faith, my stories all have good versus evil, deals with challenging issues. The sci-fi books don't have any kind of faith gospel element in it at all, but they have good versus evil, friendship, hard decisions, loss. It deals with real stuff. But this book does have Christian characters. The main character is not a Christian, and he's dealing with having his family and those around him who are believers, and he's trying to sort things out. And so it might feel familiar to certain people. I have not heard anybody say that it's preachy as of yet. But you do see this character going in and out of relationships where their faith is, the other character's faith is strong and obvious, and he's sitting back kind of, a little skeptical and trying to sort through some of it as part of his own recovery from some military injuries and post-traumatic stress kind of stuff. So this character is Hank is he's carrying a heavy load.
So there's so many different aspects to that I love. Just, I guess, as a blanket statement, I highly respect and look up to what you're doing. That's really amazing work, especially being, that relationship between the pre-marriage couples that you talk with, that's intimate stuff. You guys get this relationship that's just solid. And then to marry those people, that's just incredible. I love to hear that kind of inspiring story.
Yeah. It's been wonderful. Yeah.
So when you're really in the heart of it, you're writing every day. Well, actually, I'm not even going to just assume that. Would you just tell us how you go about your writing process?
Yeah. So I've got it I've got a really good routine now. For a while, it was write when you feel like it, and then when you publish something and people like the book, you got to write another one, and you need to actually like know what you're doing. So I've developed a routine now, and my routine is just like my old routine when I first started, which is I get up before everybody else in the house. And so my wife and my son are snoring away and it's dark. I get up at like 5:30, say, and I get my coffee and I come out and sit in this chair and I write until I kind of lose steam, which is usually about 8 a.m. And then I get ready and head into the office, hit the church, and then I do my studies, and then I write my sermons and such there, and come home and do family stuff. So I'll write for 2 solid hours probably every single morning, except for Sundays. I'll write Monday through Saturday. Same exact deal every single day. I get about anywhere between 500 to 2,000 words. Some days, like a Saturday, I might get 2,500 words in, which for anybody who doesn't think in terms of word count, 2,500 words for me is a chapter. That's like a 10-page chapter, say. So I might do a 10-page chapter on a Saturday. I might do, 3 pages on a Monday, but every day. And so you do that every day for 100 days, and you've written a pretty good sized book.
That process that you just explained, and the final goal of finishing, you put that together in a way that was personal to you, but also made sense to anybody listening, because do that every day, keep disciplined, and look, in 100 days, you're going to have a product, a goal that in your mind you thought to be impossible, especially as a first-time writer. I'm speaking from my personal thoughts. And I love how you did that.
Yeah. It's changed my writing career by just being intentionally diligent. Now I have that personality. I'm a very, very regimented, diligent. I always tell people I live my life in 15-minute increments. And I'm like, hey, your 15 minutes starts later. This is my 15 minutes.
I'm jealous. I really want to live that way.
Yeah, it takes a certain kind of personality, I think, but the diligence for writing is key. Yeah. So that's my routine right now. Yeah.
I really like that. And 2,500 words. That's I think it was Brandon Sanderson who says, like, he does, to be honest, I don't truly remember who, but it's some crazy amount, like 5,000 words a day. And people hear that, and that's naturally just kind of daunting. Like, I can't live up to that. So I think it's key, and you covered this, to find what works for you.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget, if you're writing full time like Brandon Sanderson, you could write 400,000 page books. I mean, if I can do 2,500 in say 2 to 3 hours, then I could do maybe 10,000 in a 8-hour day if I had a full 8-hour day or a 10-hour day. But most of us don't have that luxury. And so I know for sure I'll go to the office and work on my sermons and stuff, and I'll write another 1,000 to 1,500 words at the office without any trouble. So in an average day, I mean, you could see it as a full timer. If I was full time, I'd probably be writing like 6-8 books a year,
Wow.
because I would just blast in through. But because it's always going to be a side thing, I'm trying to do 2 a year. Yeah,
I love that, man. And so this is, as a whole, your writing process, and I really enjoyed listening to that. Do you do anything special, or again, personal to you, when you're trying to come up with certain plot points, like ideas or characters?
I do. I drive in my car and I daydream about characters and scenes. There's something about, or maybe, mow the lawn or do woodwork. I have a woodworking hobby. I love woodworking.
Me too.
Building. Oh, good. And when I'm doing those things, I daydream about the characters, the stories, try to visualize like scenes that are interesting. And once I land on some scenes that are special, then those become targets for me within the story to aim at. So I'll even sometimes, like if I'm having trouble sleeping in the middle of the night, my mind will go to like, hey, what's Matt going to do in this next chapter? Because I need to solve this issue that I'm dealing with. So it's a lot of daydreaming for me. And then it's just keyboard time, because the creativity happens ultimately at the keyboard. And we can plan ourselves to death and never write a book. I'm on the opposite side. I'm like, listen, I'm going to figure it out, but I'm going to get to typing. I'm going to type until I figured it out.
No, when it comes, this is actually something that just came to me that I have personally been questioning, because I'm finding it hard for myself. When you are coming up with a character and what makes them that character, like the way that they speak, or if they're quirky, their characteristics, is that something that you personally plan, or do you kind of just let your character come to you as you're writing?
Yeah, it a little bit of both. It happens in two ways for me. One is I visualize an actor for a role, and they really influence the vibe of the character. I mean, you don't know the personality of the actor, but you can like think of like mannerisms and voices and stuff. So, for example, my main character in the Space Warfare group, Mac, which is the Major Malcolm Lambert, goes by Mac. He was always Idris Elba in my early story, where he was a side character. And I was like, I love Idris Elba. This would be a cool side character. And then he just sort of made his way to be that main character I was describing earlier. And so still to this day, when I'm describing a scene, it's Idris Elba in the scene, because I can hear the voice, I can see the mannerisms, the twinkle in his eye, the smile, those sorts of things. And so there's a big influence there for a character. And then the personality comes out through the writing, little things that begin. And I think ultimately your main character a lot of times is you. I think Mac probably has a lot of my traits and motives and stuff. But then there's other characters, like in my book, Sanchez. If anybody's read the books, they know Luis Sanchez, the sergeant who's like Mac's close friend, is a total goofball, super annoying, really obnoxious a lot of times, and funny. And he gets his own chapter in every book where he gets his point of view, and his point of view is just insane half the time. And he was originally supposed to be a tough, kind of gnarly guy, and he came out as more like, you remember Michael Pena in Ant-Man?
Yes.
The Hispanic guy in Ant-Man. He kind of came out as that guy, and now we can't help but to see him as that. And so he's got this like blank stare and silly, sarcastic, fast talking stuff. And the character became that for some reason. And then I wrote not a first person, but a point of view, a Sanchez point of view in the middle of Into the Darkness, where you all of a sudden are in Sanchez's head, and he's setting up, and he encounters one of the major diplomats, and he's so awkward, and he's so weird as a person that it becomes a funny, I think it's a hilarious chapter, because he, as a character, I was trying to just let him be himself, and it comes out. And so I think really there's always an inspiration for a character. Maybe somebody maybe somebody you saw, maybe something that's come to mind, but then it's the writing, the words, and the interaction with other characters that really starts to form that character to who they are. And then the hard part is maintaining that from book to book to book, because then you want to be true to what came out in the first book. Of course, they can have, development and change and grow and stuff, but their personality and their quirks need to remain. And that can be challenging, because especially jumping book to book and different characters, you can forget, like, oh yeah, Sanchez, he wouldn't respond that way. He would be annoying. He needs to be annoying in this chapter. right here. But that character also has this thing where he flips a switch and he's a super serious professional operator. And that's why Mac loves him and he's Mac's right-hand man. But then as soon as the mission is like at a standstill and they're okay, then he's immediately sarcastic and annoying. And so you're as even as a reader, you're just like, oh, I've had beta readers tell me like sometimes there's just way too much Sanchez, too much of him talking crazy for me. And I was like, fantastic. That's
there it
so
is.
good. Yeah. I'm like,
Man.
I know he's annoying. I can't stand him either. He's the worst.
Michael Pena is like, I feel like he does the same character really well in everything he's in. So I love that you used that. And that makes so much sense to me because I guess I was trying to, in my personal, attempting to write, even kind of just to practice. I have to create a character and I have to come up with these things rather than what am I influenced by? What
do you like?
Yes. Because
here's
I'm doing.
You should try. I'm going to tell you something you should try that you'll love it. Have you heard of Scrivener, the writing program? Have you used that? Yeah,
I haven't used it. I've heard of it.
Okay, it's you. I think it is Mac only, which is a negative for some, obviously, but you can do it in Word and other things. But what I do is in Scrivener, they have these character sketch things where it's off on the side, and you can have your character page, and you can put photos and descriptions and motivations and things. And so what I do is I go through with my major characters as I'm developing them. Like in book 3, Space Warfare Group book 3, I've got a bad guy that I'm planning, a new bad guy who's like a henchman sidekick kind of thing. And I'm already visualizing like what he looks like and what he's like, but I'm going to be casting him with an actor. I'll find a picture of an actor and I'll put that picture in there, and I'll find some other pictures of similar guys with size and gear and look, and I'll put those in there and cast him as if it was a movie. And sometimes it's hard, like in Deceitful Above All Things, the main character of this book he's half Chinese, half American, which is also really, really unique in a mystery to have a Chinese character. I can't think of any actors. He is something out of the imagination. I can't cast him with anybody, but that's okay. So I don't really have a picture or anything. He just is what he is from the imagination. But most of the time I'm able to cast them with actors, and it really helps.
I can tell, and just thinking about that, hypothetically, me doing such, I feel like I'm going to be messaging you soon, like, man, that totally brought this whole nother dynamic and aided me in this way. So I appreciate you kind of just breaking that down for me and everybody watching. I think that's amazing.
If there's other writers in that, like, I mean, I love talking to writers, and if that resonates with anybody, like, shoot me a message. I would love to talk about like character development and how you do it, and the crazy. There's nothing better than when you're writing a scene and the characters do something that is them, but it surprises you. And it really is like the sweet spot where you're just chasing that. Like, I want to be so lost in the story that the characters are doing their things. And you sit back and you're like, wow, I didn't expect that to happen. That's amazing. And it happens. It happens a lot, actually. And it's one of the reasons why writing is even more fun than reading.
That sounds so much, again, that sounds like I've heard that a few times, more than a few times. And I cannot wait to feel that, because I guess in my head, the way that I view it, it's like if I'm going and I'm in a groove and everything's coming to me and I'm being like, I have my creative freedom and things just coming to me, it's natural. That's the thing that I'm after at the moment. And I guess I went into it thinking, well, just never have thought about it before. All of these aspects that go into writing a novel, it's one heck of a learning curve. There's lots to it, and keeping it straight is, super important, obviously.
It is, but let go of some of the, like, we have the restrictions we put on ourselves because we think we are supposed to do a certain thing. And I would say let go of all that and write a bunch of crazy stuff and let some wild things happen and see what comes out of that, especially while you're practicing and you're working on like, working on some short story stuff or just some scenes. And give yourself the freedom to write junk, because you might be surprised, 3 pages of junk, but then 5 pages of something that changes your life.
I love that. I think I've written more again. It's amazing because I add these to my notes and I'll have this quick reference.
Yeah. Great.
So let's see. Sorry, I had a brain fart. I lost my place here. What piece of advice would you give somebody? I know you just gave a lot of it. Maybe if you could go back and know one thing that you didn't know that would have made it a lot easier with your particular difficulties personally, what would that be for you? What would you go back and tell yourself?
Yeah, it really comes down to the same answering the original question, which was what advice would you give to a aspiring author? And it's the same advice I would give myself back then, which is sit in a chair and type. If you're not typing story and dialogue and descriptions and building chapters, then you're never going to write a book. You have to type. And so I don't know who said it originally, but somebody was, this was many years ago, probably 15 years ago. And they were talking about writing methods, and they said they used the BIC method. It was some author, the BIC method. And I was like, oh, really? Like writing on, pen and paper. And no, BIC was an acronym or an abbreviation for butt in chair.
Okay.
Butt in chair. And they were like, that's my method. I sit down in my chair and I type. And that to me was pretty amazing. And then add to that, there was some other writers. I wish I could remember who it was that said it, but they talk about writer's block and like, I don't have the creativity right now. And they say, hey, listen, if you're a plumber, there's no such thing as like plumber block. And if you're a truck driver, there's no such thing as truck driver block. And if you're a doctor, there's no doctor block. You do medicine, you drive trucks, you do plumbing. And so that also clicked for me. So it was like, okay, you get in a chair and you type every day, and you set a time, and you just set yourself up for being able to produce. And then when you produce a draft, it's going to be terrible, but it's done. And now you can edit, and editing is what makes it sweet. You can dump stuff, you can boost stuff, you can change stuff. Like you can do anything once that first story is written. But man, if you can't get that first draft done, it'll never be a book.
Oh man, this has been wow. So wow, I love that. I love it because it's just it's fundamental. I totally get. I've sat down at the computer and just looked at the screen and just thought, and not even a single letter was typed. And so I can see how, coming up with that discipline and write every day, even if it's, again, that first draft's going to suck. And then you can take the next draft and clean it up and just get it down right. Because if you're not writing characters or story, how are you going to write a book? I love that. What are you working on currently, and what is next for you?
I'm working on Space Warfare Group number 3. We're unclear on the name yet, but it'll be something involving darkness, which you can appreciate. It won't be Beard of Darkness. I'll give you that.
Oh, actually,
yeah.
Just throw your readers for a loop. Like, why is this called Beard of Darkness?
You know what? We need a Into the Darkness endorsed by the Beard of Darkness. I need a Beard of Darkness.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So working on Space Warfare Group book 3, which is an immediate follow-on book 2. If anybody read book 2, it ends. I don't end on cliffhangers, but I don't resolve the larger arc. We have a large arc going. So book 2 ends with Mac and Sanchez and the team on a little starfighter, or on their special Starhawk ship, heading back to space. And a bunch of stuff just went down and everything is unraveling. And then book 3 opens up with Mac on the spaceship heading up. Like, it literally is like a 2-minute gap between book 2 and book 3. So that's kind of exciting. I've got like 5 point of views in that story that I'm trying to flesh out, because there's multiple things going on. And yeah, so that's the big goal. We're hoping to have that done by summer, whatever that is. That's a nice vague term. And publish by the end of summer if possible. And then alongside, we're getting more of these out. So these will come out. The mission briefs will be at least 3 parts. They should be available in paperback and ebook form. And then I'll probably be writing the 4th part, which is going to be a lot of fun with the story. With some good Sanchez stuff I'm already visualizing. That'll probably be out like midsummer as well. So I'm going to try to finish this series this year too.
I think that, so there's main books in a series, the novels, and then you've got a novella. But this extra aspect, man, I absolutely dig that. I think that it's brilliant, not only as you giving to your readers and your fans, but as a marketing addition. Like, as a fan, what more would you want than as much as you can have, right? And I think that categorizes stories and makes it really nice and neat. And I'm really digging that idea.
Yeah, and if you're a writer who does characters, like I'm heavily character driven, it's all about the characters. You want to see those characters as much as possible. So if they're in a 40-page short story, I want it. I love those characters. I want to have it, and I'm trying to produce things that I want. And then if 3 people buy it, then great. That's awesome.
I like the short stories, particularly. Even if they're just like a standalone short story, but even more so if it's part of a series I'm really loving. And the way that I like to say it's a quick punch to the throat. And you're just like, oh, okay, I like that. Let's keep going. I think those are my favorite, action-packed, really kind of what you're saying you're doing with these.
Yeah, and I think very soon too, once I get this set up, I'm gonna start giving number 1 away to anybody who orders off my website, because I sell my books direct. There's the warehouse right here. I've got a whole bunch of paperbacks and hardbacks and stuff, and I sell direct from my website. And as soon as these are ready, the first volume will be included as a freebie in all those website orders. Which will be just a little taste where you're like, all right, I got to get them all.
Yes. So your website is absolutely stellar. It's great. And I love what you're doing. You keep the stock on you so that people can order direct. And not only that, you can get signed copies too, which I think is an absolute gem for an author to offer. So that's really,
some freebie stuff that you can only get from me, like stickers and bookmarks and things that you can only get from me. So it's special, and I think that's I like that stuff. Yeah, swag from authors is the best. Yeah.
So I keep all my swag, and I have to say I've gotten a lot of swag over the months because I haven't had a channel for very long. So I'm saying months, and I have yours is pretty superior. I mean, the cool card that comes with the Space Warfare group and the Signia, man, that is just top shelf swag. That's it.
That's reflective Space Warfare group logo. Yeah, I mean, I hope everybody watching is like, I gotta have it, and they'll inundate me with emails tonight. But our bookmarks, we made bookmarks as business cards, and I think it's really fun because we made these heavy business cards with the covers on it, so that there's people that use them as bookmarks in all kinds of things. not just my book. They're just like, I love them. They're so great because they're just short and
Yes,
and fun. But yeah,
and
it's
they're
lots
high
of
quality.
swag. Yeah,
They're
yeah,
not
and there's
flimsy.
yeah, exactly. I'm glad you like it.
So working on book 3, cool, the mission briefs. So I'm curious, do you do conventions? Have you ever done conventions? Do you ever plan to do conventions?
I would love to, but at this point, I'm not sure how we pull it off. I wanted to go to the self-publishing convention in Vegas, which is about 8 hours from me. Up in people think Nevada, like everybody lives near Las Vegas, but in Nevada, we're 8 hours from Vegas. But there's a huge self-published indie author convention there every year. We'd like to go to, but I'm considering starting to do like Comic-Cons or something, get a booth and have books, but everything is super expensive to do. And I'm just a little nervous about overcommitting to some stuff. So we'll see down the road. I would love to do it. And if there was ever a time when somebody invited me or something, then I'd definitely
That's
consider
awesome.
that.
And that's travel too, is they're often, like you said, they're never usually next door. They're a commitment. And yeah, so I think a lot of people are in that same area with that. Are you reading
It's a
anything
tough one for
currently?
reading. Yeah. Okay. So I'm reading Brian Wilson's Forsaken Planet.
Mhm.
I think it's actually right on my shoulder right there, other shoulder. And I'm reading it very slow because reading is hard with when you're a writer. So I got Brian Wilson right now that I'm reading, and then I am listening to a number of things, and I just kind of dropped out of some books I didn't enjoy on audio. So I'm in between audiobooks. I'm considering starting the Wheel of Time, Robert Jordan, starting it over on audiobook to listen and try to finish it this time. We'll see. But Brian's is my big one. And then because of my ministry, I'm reading tons of theology books and stuff all the time for my teaching and prep and stuff.
If you could shoot me a recommendation for one theology book, one that's really been influential for you, what would it be?
Boy, depends on what you'd be looking for. But I think that one book that is very, very helpful and encouraging is a book called Gentle and Lowly by an author named Ortland, Ortland, Gentle and Lowly. And it's a modern take on a old Puritan, like 1600s Puritan view of Jesus as a gentle, loving Savior who is not a cold, distant God, but a close, personal friend. And it is super encouraging, kind of as a devotional kind of book. And it's easy to.
That sounds very much something I would just get sucked into, and that would also be really important in my life.
It would, and I wouldn't say it's not necessarily like evangelistic, but it's heavily gospel centered, lots of scripture. But what it does is it presents a fuller picture of who Jesus is, what it means for a Christian to know and relate to Jesus as Savior, as Shepherd, as God, as all those things. Yeah, it's a really helpful book. Yeah, helpful book. I was actually just on an advanced team, street team for a new what's called a systematic theology, which is a big 1,000-page book, came out by a guy named Stephen Wellum, who's a Baptist theologian in Louisville. And it's my favorite living theologian. The guy is incredible. And he writes on what theology is, doctrine of the word, doctrine of scripture, doctrine of revelation, and then the attributes of God. And it's 1,000 pages. I've got about 200 left to go, and it's just pure gold. You'll see it on Amazon. It has like 150 5-star reviews already. Wow. And it's been out for like a week. Yeah, it's just really, really good. But I had the special privilege to be on the early advanced reader team, got it early, got to read it and do some reviews and some social media posts, which, oh, by the way, for anybody, like if there are Christians out there who would be interested in some of these things, Charles Hack is actually a pen name, and I write under Charles Hack to kind of separate a little bit from my ministry. So if somebody was interested in like, hey, I want to know more about some of those books and stuff, contact me, and then I'll hook you up with the personal page where I do more ministry stuff and all that. It's not hidden, it's not secret. It's just to kind of keep some separation.
No, that absolutely makes sense, and that's awesome that you're sharing that too, because that takes passion, and that's very important to you, and that comes across, and I think that's amazing. Man, this has been so much fun and so informational. I didn't think that I could look up to what you do, how you do it, and what aids you on that journey and doing the things that you do. More than I did, but well, you've proved me wrong. I think that it's so phenomenal.
Well, thank you. It's super encouraging to hear. And I have to say, Matt, what you're doing, well, I have to call you Beard because that's how
no, Matt. No, Matt. You're good.
I have to say, so in the book world, like everybody's wonderful in the book world, there's something that you're doing that's different that I find incredibly interesting and encouraging. And it's these conversations with people where you're learning about people and you're learning about just crazy stuff. And you are a sponge for information and interesting things. And man, it makes these conversations so much fun that no matter who you're talking to, like you had the four book review guys, Charlie was on there and some of the others. And I don't know any of those people, but man, that interview was so interesting. It was amazing. And I got on the Twitter and, commented on that post and said, man, you guys are great because you're letting conversations go places that are more interesting. And I love it. So keep it up, man.
Thank you so much. That means a whole lot to me, man. That really, that's what I'm about when I'm here. It's like, I love people and I want to know what I don't know and what I'm unfamiliar with. And that brings everybody closer, I think.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Keep it up.
Thank you so much, man. This has been amazing. So I have a couple ideas in mind, not only regarding like my personal writing, but some future ideas for the channel. So I will be getting a hold of you about those soon because I'm really excited. So I would like to hear your thoughts on them too. But man, thank you for letting me borrow you. I know you're a busy guy. You've got a lot going on. You're a family man. So thank you for letting me borrow you.
Yeah, you're welcome. My wife will appreciate that. She's really good. She's so supportive. She's my biggest support. But yeah, thank you as well. Wonderful time. I look forward to it again, even if it's not online, but just chatting. It's great to get to know you.
Absolutely. Thank you all who are here blowing the chat up with these wonderful comments about questions. And I also love to see the context that's just between the chatters. It's so fun. And those who it is cool. And
will those all be on there? Can I go back and read all those? Those will still be on there, right?
Yep. Now it does take like 12 hours, something like that, for it to process. So I would check tomorrow. It does take YouTube a little bit. Yep. So, and also thanks for you guys who will watch in the future. Like, share, subscribe. That always helps not only me, but the people I chat with. And tomorrow I will be talking with Usman from Bards and Books. He's a cool dude. He's a great booktuber, very intelligent, fun guy. So tomorrow at 8, I believe, I will put it on Twitter. Until next time, guys, y'all have a wonderful night. Charles, have a wonderful night. We'll talk soon.
See you, Beard. Take care, man.